Halloween.
Forever.
Steve, my boy, how are you doing this fine evening? This fine, spooky, chilly fall evening, Steve. How are you?
Autumnal. We've moved past second summer, where we had 2 80-degree days of summer in Pittsburgh for some reason. But yeah, I'm good. I'm into it.
Yeah, autumnal. That's a good word. Steve, I'm gonna be honest. Speaking of autumnal, I'm getting worried about this whole inflation thing and what it's doing to pumpkin prices.
Oh, yeah.
You hear about this? Pumpkin prices are on the fritz, Steve.
Are they getting pumped up?
They are. That wasn't the joke. Shut your goddamn mouth. Don't step on my joke. Steve, I heard that pumpkin prices are getting so high this year because of inflation. It's not just happening here in the United States. I heard come Thanksgiving, down in Jamaica, they might be paying $5. It's even $6 a slice for pumpkin pie, maybe as much as $10 in Barbados. Isn't that kind of crazy?
That's kind of wild. Where is this going?
Yeah. Well, I'm done talking about Pirates of the Caribbean. Let's just get in the movie. Welcome, boys and girls, to a very spooky minisode of Halloween is Forever. I'm Brian.
I'm Steve. Ugh.
Steve.
Yeah.
Get enthusiastic because you know what? We got a couple of little fucking trick-or-treaters coming on up here. Come on. Wait a second. Those aren't little trick-or-treaters. Them's full-grown mans. Them handsome boys coming up the sidewalk here. Who do we got here? Holy shit. Is that our old buddy Drew West of Drew and the Blue and the Horror Knots? Come on up here, Drew.
Hey, gang.
You're a little early for trick-or-treating.
Well, it's never too early in this household, despite the good housekeeping attire you see around me.
Well, hold on. There's another trick or treat. Hey, hold on a second. What a coincidence. That's not a trick or treater. That is the director of the film we're talking about this very evening. Director of Carved, currently on Hulu. Is that Justin Harding?
Hey, everybody. It's me. Thanks for
Wow.
having me. Happy to be here. I almost didn't make it. I actually got stranded on a boat on an island about an hour ago, and I just barely made it off. That's true. So I'm happy I made it into with you guys.
What a damn Halloween adventure. That sounds like a dang Garfield Halloween adventure you were on. I do want to hear more about this stranding that you that you were dealing with. But what a dang coincidence that the director of the movie we're going to be talking about happened to be walking up on our front porch trick-or-treating on this gorgeous evening. Well, we're going to talk about, like I said, 2024's Carve. We're going to talk about some fun, spooky music that Drew's got going on here. We got some friends in the Discord. We got a full house here tonight, boys and ghouls. But of course, before we do all that mess, let's get festive, guys. Are we drinking on some beers this evening? Steve, you want to kick us off and talk about some brewskis you might be drinking on?
I'm drinkins. And I pulled this one because the last time Drew was on, we talked about Frankenstein, right?
That's right.
Yes, we did.
And so I know Drew loves the classics, so I pulled a classic, and it is the Nosferatu from Great Lakes Brewing.
Nice.
That is a classic. Yeah. And you know what? That's very topical as we are, 6 weeks or so, something like that, away from Mr. Robert Eggers' release of Nosferatu, which we're all looking forward to. When's that come out? Isn't it like beginning of December? Yeah, he's a dang Crimbus vampire. Isn't that sometime at the beginning of December that thing's coming out? My friend Jared and I already have a date where we are going to eat mushrooms and go watch the movie. So I'm looking forward to that. Is that beer still like absolutely absurdly aggressively bitter in like a fun way? But
yeah, it's still 8%. It's still 70 IBUs. The only thing that's changed from its original release is now it's called a double red IPA.
Yes.
Where before it was just a red ale. And then they're like, oh wait, we have to brand it out of hell.
Yeah. You call it an IPA, it's going to triple sales. So that's probably smart on their behalf. that beer was one of the very first beers I purchased legally once I reached legal drinking age in beautiful Youngstown, Ohio. Just a little tidbit, little bit of hot goss for the fans out there. All right, let's pass it over. Drew, what do you drink on? I'm going left to right in terms of where you're at on my screen here.
We got an expired Sweetwater Hazy IPA. That's the.
Those hazies hold up good when they are old.
Well, my neighbor.
That's where all the flavor is on the back end.
I wasn't even home, and I got my neighbor dropped off. He's like, "Hey, here's a few cases of beer that are expired." I was like, "Oh yeah, all right. I mean, it's still beer, right?"
I love that
beer.
neighbor that's just like, what dirtball do I know that I'll take old beer?
I know.
Here, you drink this.
All right. If that's what I give off, I'll take it. That's fine.
Yeah, hey, if it's free beer, then I'll be a dirtball. Hey, Justin, what are you sipping on over there?
Well, you guys have the fun beers. I have a Sleeman Clear, not very exciting. More of a lighter beer. I typically like IPAs. I'm up in Toronto, Canada, so we have different brands than you guys. IPA is my go-to, but leading up to the shoot, I was trying to be healthy and sort of cut down on, just trying to drink lighter beers, so I'm stuck with a Sleeman Clear 2.0. I also have wine, though, so I'm double.
Double. That's a good healthy choice. I like that. Sleeman. I've had some Sleeman beers. They make their way down here a little bit. When I lived up in the upper Midwest in Wisconsin, we could occasionally get our hands on some Sleeman up there.
Not bad.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind them. I am drinking on it because, guys, heads up, if you've not been paying attention, you're not looking at the calendar. It's almost Halloween. Like, we're in the home stretch. I'm done dicking around with the pumpkin beers. I'm done playing whack fuck with the Oktoberfests. I'm getting into the heavy, hard shit. None more black. I'm getting ready to fuck with Satan. You understand what I'm saying? It's to that point in the Halloween season where it's put away the jack-o'-lanterns, start doing sex magic, start hailing Satan, start doing devil shit. So I'm going just straight up inky jet black Imperial Stout. I'm doing one of my favorites, which is Norwal from Sierra Nevada. Big, nasty son of a bitch. Gonna anger up the blood, get me ready to do rituals, sex magic, shit like that.
Right.
Sure, yeah. Start calling yourself Alistair Crowley in the middle of the night.
That's where my head's at right now.
Yelling at your wife.
I got it. Yeah,
I'm the reincarnation.
I'm collecting cum. I'm collecting period blood. I'm getting ready to do sex magic. That's where I'm at this point in October, guys. All right. So we got some beer out of the way. We got a couple other fun things we got to do at the top of the show here. Typically, we would probably be talking about what our showdown movies are going to be for next month pretty quick here, but we got to announce what our showdown topics are. Steve, why don't you remind the boils and ghouls at home what our 3 showdown topics were potentially going to be for the lovely upcoming month of November?
Yeah, so we were a little slow this week, this month with getting our showdown topic in order. So we just decided what the topic is going to be. It was a choice between modern day slashers, micro budget gems, and fan films. And by a vote of 1, it's micro budget gems.
One vote.
Yeah.
Ooh, the slimmest of margins. We're going to talk about micro budget gems. I love that. I think we kind of are putting a cap for quote unquote micro budget, not to say there are any reliable numbers out there for 99% of the movies, but I think we said something in the range of like 300,000, anything below $300,000 be considered micro budget. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think we called it 400,000 the first time because I went and checked our first episode that we did that on. And I went through, we had it listed as 400,000. And I also noticed that we hadn't had Meg Rails up on that episode because somebody picked Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. That's a Meg move. That's why Meg Rails exist. It's interesting though, because 400,000, that like in the modern filmmaking landscape, that seems a little high compared to some, but like a movie that I talked about in a recent episode here. Have you seen? I know Steve has, but But Justin and Drew, have you seen A Dark Song?
Yeah.
No.
Saw A Dark Song. I saw it at the Telluride Horror Show about 5 years ago.
Love that movie. And again, you can trust the internet, about as far as you can throw it. But I saw that movie was made for like $50,000-$60,000, which is crazy.
It's fairly contained in that one house for the most part, right? And it's just relying heavily on those amazing performances and a really strong script. That's the secret, right? You need one location. If you just lock it down to one place, you can get away with it if you got a good script and great actors.
Yeah. And that script is like perfect. Literally they're not allowed to leave, like, right? So anyway, my point is 400 too high? We'll talk about it, guys. We don't got to make decisions like this right now. Stop putting pressure on me. We'll talk about that as we get a little closer to November. Next week rather. We will oh Jesus God, it's almost November. Holy shit.
Bummer.
We'll have to announce it via the social. We'll announce it via the social media what our picks are, so you can have some time to watch them ahead of that first Monday in November. Okie dokie. Hey, happy birthday, Ron! One of our Patreon friends in the chat here. Wait, it was your birthday? Yes. Happy belated birthday to you, Ron. If you want to help us pick those showdown topics, or maybe you got a suggestion to put on our big ass spinny ass wheel of horror. Follow us over on the social media. Slide into that old DMs on Instagram at Halloween is Forever. You can go over on the Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, at Hallow Forever. Or you can send us an old-fashioned email at halloweensforeverpod@gmail.com if that's your fancy. All right. Real quick as well, because I will 100% forget. Justin, Drew, why don't you tell the boils and ghouls at home? They like to follow us on the social medias. Where would they find you if they want us to check out? We're going to talk about some specific projects here, but if they want to keep up with you into perpetuity, where might they find you on the interwebs?
Instagram, Justin Harding _, just all one word. That's probably the best place to find me. Also, I'm on Facebook. I just started using X, Twitter, but Instagram's probably the best bet.
Instagram. Yeah, that's about the only one I still use. Steve's a little bit more savvy. Steve keeps up on the rest of that stuff. I ain't got the patience for it. I'm a goddamn grump. Drew, where would you find you and your various music projects as well? I know we've told them before, but we got to keep telling them. And when I find some of that good old fashioned rock and roll music,
that's us. Drew and the Blue on Instagram and every handle on every platform. We have we're on Facebook and TikTok and YouTube. Mostly, you can find me if you want to, but it's not worth following me because I mean, it's just better you follow Drew and the Blue. But yeah, man, that's the main one mostly. Oh, Spotify. I'm a dummy.
Yeah, you got to go on the Spotify. That's where I interact with Drew and his good old singing tunes over there on the Spotify. And listen, he's not going to say it, but I will. If you are anywhere close to, the Philly area, if you're in Pennsylvania, if you're in the fucking tri-state area, do yourself a favor and figure out next time Drew's playing live and go watch Drew and the Blue live, because they put on a hell of a show.
Thank you, sir.
I've seen you about 150 times and I love it every single time. I'm always all sweaty afterwards.
Well, it's like, you know what I mean? You're in good company. I'm coming to your town, though. I didn't want to forget to say that.
Wait, you're coming to Pittsburgh?
Your town, yeah. If you're listening, if you the listeners, probably not your town, but
okay,
but Brian, and your town, December 7th at Mr. Smalls in Pittsburgh, yeah.
Oh, nice!
Holy shit! So I will be there.
Cleveland the night before, and then we're coming down. But yeah, man,
I will be there. Oh. I love Mr. Smalls, and I love me some Drew and the Blue.
Well, we love you too.
I will be there. And I'm going to do drugs.
Church skate park.
Everybody's like, the church. I'm like, yeah, but it's not a church. Or maybe it still is. I don't know.
It's not a church anymore.
Yeah.
It's a church and a skate park, and then it was something else.
God, I love doing drugs in churches.
How about it?
Yeah.
All right. So before we get into this here movie, Drew, was this last year or 2 years ago? You had a spooky signal come out on Halloween, and all the boys and ghouls were absolutely loving on it. That was last year.
Yes, sir.
Tell them about the jam, the literal jam that you are. I mean, not literal in that it's like some sort of fruit preserves.
No,
but literal in that and that the name Jam is in the song name. I don't know that I needed to explain that.
No, that's okay. Whatever you think Jellyfish Jam is as a sonic experience, that's what it is. It's coming out on Halloween, which for some reason every year, I don't know, it's just fun to release a song on Halloween. And we're not like a horror band. It's, a rock and roll, garage rock kind of thing. But I don't know, we just try to do something fun every year. So last year we covered Monster Mash. So we got the rights to do that. And that was so much fun, dude, because we had that on vinyl and everything. And then this year we, Jellyfish Jam coming out October 31st. And I'd say it's danceable if you want to dance. And if you're not a dancer, then whatever that song is to you, that's what it is.
I'm not a dancer, but I do find myself dancing, getting all liquored up and dancing at those shows. So I'm excited for 12/7. Might be my last night on Earth. We'll see.
Hey,
who knows?
Lubrication is key. Social lubrication, social, I say.
And both and all. And
surely.
I would go as far as to say any and all lubrication positive in my book.
Yeah. Lube on the inside, lube on the outside. It's all important.
Ice cream paint job. Got
That's
it.
True. That's what I like. That's how I like. That's a strong way of putting it, Steve. All right, Justin, let's get into to this flicky here. Carve 2024 currently available streaming on and getting some nice promotion on the Hulu. And I will tell you one thing. I have for listeners, longtime listeners, I'm a big fan of Shudder. I know despite the ownership and all that stuff, I do like to plumb the depths of Tubi from time and time again. But I have said in the past that I was disappointed with the horror offerings on Hulu. I will say this year, marked improvement. They're finally getting after the horror movies, I think, in the way that they should. With this movie, Carved, which I had an absolute blast with. And then a couple other ones I just watched, and now I didn't write it down because I'm a dumbass, but Mr.
Crockett.
Mr. Crockett, which actually shares a performer.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see. I actually watched those both on Hulu last night as a little double feature and enjoyed the hell out of it.
Oh.
So tell us about how this business get going with Hulu.
It's actually been quite a long journey. So for many years I was making short films and they were in various festivals. And one day I just got a call from a curator in the festival circuit that said that they're looking for filmmakers to pitch 5-minute Halloween films to Hulu as part of their Huluween Film Festival in 2018. And I had a bunch of ideas. So I called him back and I pitched him 5 ideas. And he said, "Oh, these are pretty good. I'm going to set up a Skype." This is before Zoom. I'm going to set up a Skype meeting with the studio. It was 20th Century at the time. And you can pitch these ideas. I said, fuck that. I'm flying in, got my own ticket, flew to the studio. I went in and I pitched these ideas, and Carved, the short film idea was just one of the ideas I pitched for this Halloween Film Festival. A sentient pumpkin that carves humans. I had a little story. And then, 2 weeks later, they called me back and said, "We like this. We want to do this." And they gave me a little baby budget. And over the course of 2 days, I made this short film called Carved in 2018 that went, I was the only Canadian that was involved. There was 8 of us from around the world. And it went on the Huluween platform, on the Hulu platform. And it was a contest. And the winner won a development deal and a $10,000 cash prize. And then we won the contest. So then I got this other phone call. They're like, "Hey, do you want to come pitch features?" So I flew myself down there to 20th Century and pitched a whole bunch of features. And then they're like, "Well, we just, kind of like the pumpkin idea. Maybe we can do that." That was 6 years ago. And over the years, we developed the script and tried to put it together. And I was very busy on other shows and wasn't available. And then, with strikes and with pandemics. And eventually we got this movie made over a long period of time. But it evolved from a short film project from 6 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw, impressed to see you won Best Short at the Toronto After Dark Festival. Is it 3 consecutive years or 3 times overall?
3 years in a row we won for different films. So I was very aggressive in the short film world. In 2016, 17, 18, I was just at multiple films and multiple festivals. I was just, because I work as a TV director and I have film cameras. I have a little studio in Toronto. So at the time I was just making little short things with friends and my, with family members using resources I had, but they were doing well and winning awards. And so I was really just doing it for fun. And they started to pick up traction. And then at one point I just thought, I should be doing this type of content because I love it, as opposed to what I was doing, which was, I was making a lot of documentary series, travel shows, things like Amazing Race, like working on reality shows, cooking shows, Master Chef, this sort of thing. But I always made short horror films because I love the genre. And I always just considered it just a passion. Then it started to pick up traction. And then Carved is just one project that ended up coming to fruition after a long period of time.
That's awesome. Yeah,
that's cool.
I love the idea. I love the idea of a great idea just hanging around there until it finds the right audience, the right setting, the right opportunity, right?
We've been talking about that a lot lately because of Terrifier, how Terrifier started as like Damien did a bunch of short films that starred art, and then he put it into that feature anthology. Then he made his own feature. So it it's the same kind of progress of it. It just keeps growing.
Yes, it's never overnight. You're right, Damien. They made All Hallows Eve, right, and then Terrifier was like a $35,000. He's a super indie, and then it's over years. And he was working on that. He's been working on art for like 20 years or something. I mean, and this idea for this sentient killer pumpkin came to me about 20 years ago because I used to work at the Toronto Zoo as an exhibit designer, and we used to have an annual pumpkin carving contest between all the departments at the zoo. And it was really competitive. And because we were designers that could sculpt and paint, we won every year this very competitive pumpkin carving contest. So the departments hated us, and it was very competitive. And one year I pitched the idea, we should do a pumpkin carving a human and just make a photorealistic silicone human that looks real with blood and guts. And they, it's like, this is a family attraction. They looked at me like I was insane. And we ended up doing a life-size orangutan with like carrot fingers. It was amazing. We won again that year. But the idea of this pumpkin was just in my head. Like, and this is before, like a lot of people say, oh, The Simpsons did it. We've seen this before. This was in like 90s. And when I was working at the zoo. So long time ago. And then so when the call came and they asked, do you have any Halloween short film ideas? That pumpkin carving, to me, it was so obvious and so simple and so shocking that no one's ever done this before. And every time I sort of pitched it to somebody, like, that's fantastic. Let's do that. It's been around forever in my mind.
Yeah, I think we've seen like a lot of films that have like jack-o'-lantern themed killers, or like they're scarecrows with jack-o'-lantern heads. But like, I don't think anybody's really taken the time to make it a monster. And the way I saw a lot of this film is I saw a lot of Tremors in this.
I was just gonna say Tremors.
Yeah. Tremors was my number one reference. Our original pitch deck is just all Tremors.
Great, because I saw it all then, so I got it.
Yeah, I mean, to me it's clearly Tremor. I pitched it as Tremors or Gremlins because it's so heavy on the puppetry. With like a peppering of like Evil Dead in terms of sort of absurdist comedy. It is a comedy forward film. So I know that's going to turn certain people off, but that's what it is, and that's how it was pitched from the beginning. This is very much a comedy horror.
It was easier to stomach, man. I'm such a weakling. I did just watch Terrifier, where it's it's like I didn't know what to expect, but I was like, well, I'm missing something, and they're on the third one. And it was awesome, and I just get grossed out by the end. And then with yours, I'm like, all right, the comic relief, I'm in it. It just helps. It helped me.
And Drew's a puppet boy as well, so I know you like a puppet.
We do like to play with puppets. It's been a while, but yeah. So I don't know, man. It was fun playing with puppets, but it was a great movie just to like not be totally grossed out the entire time.
Yeah, it's kind of a gateway horror film in some ways. It really is. It's very much the type of movie I would have loved watching as like a 15-year-old. When I was young, I was terrified of horror movies. And so it's kind of gateway, but not really because it's so gory. But I think it is in some ways a horror film made for a broader audience, not necessarily for the hardcore horror fans. I think hardcore horror fans might be annoyed by the comedic relief in this. They might be, it might not be their cup of tea. But for me, for a killer pumpkin movie that's being put out by Disney, it's actually pretty cool that they let me go so gory with it, and they didn't try to clip its wings in any way. They were very, very accommodating, and everything I wanted to do, they just kind of let me do. And so to me, Tremors, Gremlins, movies like Slither, that have this comedic relief. They're, Evil Dead. One of the first horror films I saw as a kid that wasn't even really a horror film. I was terrified to watch it. Was Army of Darkness. And then when I watched it, I was like, this is so creative and so fun. And it kind of opened up this whole world to me. I really wanted to make Carved to be that same sort of thing for a younger generation. Like, can it introduce them to the world? That's what it is.
Because it's not right. It's not cutesy. It's actually kind of mean in a fun way. Like, so this is so first of all, like, I think one of my notes as I was taking notes, which we typically do, like I tell you about like favorite scenes and some of the performances and that sort of thing. And one of the notes I wrote was like, could you not have fun with this? Right. It's just like, it's the perfect amount of silly, but then it will be unexpectedly kind of mean. You know what I mean? Which I personally love, because there's nothing worse than a horror movie that is pulling its punches in my mind. Right. And as a jaded horror fan but loves horror comedy and just loves fun, unexpected movies, I watched this, and in the first 15 minutes, it kind of shows you, okay, we're going to get a little bit gory. We're going to get a little bit, wild here. This isn't going to be, PG horror. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not going to be that. And then all of a sudden it just kind of stops pulling its punches, where like characters that you really think you're going to be rooting for just have horrible things happen to them and stuff like that. I'm like, this is great. I mean, this is right up my alley. I love it.
Yeah. I think it sets the tone best with just within the first kind of 5 seconds of that opening pan across the table, because the very first thing you see is a head cut off from the body just laying on a table. So immediately you kind of the violence you're getting. But in that same pan, there's a sign that says staff carving competition. And it's like, that's a pun. Already I'm getting a pun. The staff is getting carved. I get it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that you picked up on that. Yeah. It's I mean, that was the idea, was to make something that is just accessible and fun and celebrates the Halloween season. It's also a celebration of these types of movies that I grew up loving in the late 80s, early 90s, or mid 80s to mid 90s. Like, I just love that genre that relied on puppetry. So we tried to make this movie in a way that relied on those same old school techniques. Aliens and like Aliens and Tremors, if you watch those movies, there's so much reverse photography, in camera tricks. And we just tried to keep it in camera as much as possible. And it gets to a point where you just cannot. It's impossible. You just can't do certain things. So there's CGI augmenting this thing, obviously. But we tried to keep it in camera as much as possible. And that was the whole thing. And I like that you kind of pointed out the design of the pumpkin, because the big question was, is this a jack-o'-lantern that goes after people? And I was really against the idea of a jack-o'-lantern, because yes, not only have we seen that 1,000 times, it's also, this pumpkin never gets carved. This pumpkin does the carving. It shouldn't be a jack-o'-lantern. And that's the idea. I want to feel more like an actual sentient, real creature that has real motivation. And I like the tendrils in its eyes. I like that it has a flower, I like that it has, like, it's kind of beautiful. It also is kind of sad. Yeah. It's like emotional, but also creepy. And we tried other designs. Here, this is a maquette. This is an early design that didn't pass, but you can sort of see like the process, this is an early maquette, of like a pumpkin monster. But haven't we seen this?
Oh, yeah.
We've seen this 1,000 times. I mean, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Pumpkinhead, yeah.
That's a little bit more Pumpkinhead. Yeah, exactly.
Goosebumps, Pumpkinhead, Dark Harvest, all these movies, they have a humanoid style creature where I was way into the idea of like, this thing should move and slither like an octopus or something. Like, it has vines. Like, it should be like a spider or something. And then how do we do that?
Yeah, it was more. It reminded you more of the way it moved, like a sea creature almost. Yep. Like obviously it's a plant, right? But it has a much more believable. I know this sounds silly to say believable. We're talking about a murderous pumpkin, but a more believable biological functionality, I guess. You know what I mean? Compared to, just a humanoid with a pumpkin head. We actually just talked about Dark Harvest recently, and that was kind of, we're like, hey, cool. Like we liked it, right? But I think we liked the creature design, but I think that was kind of the feedback was like, why is just its head a pump? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. The idea that this is literally a sentient plant, I think sounds like, if you would have said that to me, I would have been like, oh yeah, I think I've seen that before. And then the more I think of it, I'm like, no, I don't think I have actually.
Well, you've seen like Little Shop of Horrors. Like Little Shop of Horrors does it. And that's
sure. You've seen killer plants.
Killer plants, Little Shop of Horror and Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. But Little Shop of Horrors is such a masterpiece, the way that they brought that Audrey 2 to life. It's so amazing to me. Now, we don't have the same resources and same budget, but like, to me, I grew up watching that movie and Tremors. I used to watch them so much, and to be able to put out something like this that's inspired by that, to me, is just really cool. Because I hope the younger versions of me are out there watching this and try to make their own weird puppet horror movies.
You said Goosebumps, and immediately I go to Stay Out of the Basement, right?
Yeah, exactly. You've seen it. It's been on the cover of the books, and it
was just my age bracket in elementary school. It's like,
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Simpsons did it with the Grand Pumpkin, and the same thing. It's a humanoid walking around with vines, that's like a body with a jack-o'-lantern face. I mean, this is just
you roast the unborn.
Yeah, it's great. I actually didn't know about that. Somebody on my hockey team mentioned it to me recently, and I went and looked it up. I was like, oh wow, okay, that's cool. But our pumpkin's very different. It's not inspired by that. It's inspired by like Guillermo del Toro monsters, where it has real motivation. It's just trying to survive. It's actually just trying to protect its babies, its children.
That's to say, it's actually a sympathetic monster too.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, absolutely love the design there, and I also loved. And we've talked about this on the podcast before. I like a movie you can't trust. Yeah. Meaning you don't see somebody and go, well, that person's going to survive. You know what I mean? So this movie, and you're right. You're like, well, never feels like there's stakes, because character X, you can tell they're not going to die. You know what I mean? They're going to survive to the end. And this movie I loved, it's not going full Terrifier 3 and, hacking up children, which is an acquired taste. Right. But I think in this instance, the fact that, and we're spoiling this a little bit. So for those of you who, haven't watched it yet, skip ahead 35, 40 seconds. I don't know. We're probably going to do some spoilers here as well. So, this deserves a fresh set of eyes, but the fact that Bill and Kevin, who you think are going to be like, when you first see them, you kind of think Kevin's going to be like the hero, and he is to a certain extent, but then you just see his decapitated head and you're like, that's a little redundant to say decapitated head, but you see his head laying there and you're like, Jesus Christ, I thought he was going to be fine. I thought he was going to save the day and walk off into the sunset.
Yeah.
They had to, that death actually is one of my favorites, because I just love the poetry in that death. I love that they hear it. I love that they hear it happen, and you're not sure, are they fighting this pumpkin? Is it happening? And then I just like the idea of revealing in like these two simple shots. And in those two simple shots, you see his head. You see the pain in his eyes, and his lover really is sitting there with his heart ripped.
Yeah.
And then his heart it drops on the ground, and when he falls, and then the way that they kind of, you can just feel their souls gone. And there's like, it's funny and sad at the same time, or at least that was the idea. And it's just the simplicity of doing that and letting them go that way, I thought it was really cool. I
love that.
Yeah, those two characters, it's funny. It gave me the Trailer Park Boys, Randy and Leahy, the same.
And Leahy, yeah.
Because there's something you could tell that DJ.
I didn't even think about that. That's so true.
All right, you could just tell there's incompetence just built in, and so you just know it's like, all right, this is not the A team, but it was just cool, man.
But yeah, Kevin would have been Randy, because Randy was always carrying the walkie-talkie all the time, and then DJ Qualls as Bill has kind of that air of authority. I wanted to ask specifically about that shot of Kevin's head on the ground. There's a really nice reflection in the pool of blood as well. I feel like that was was that post effects though?
No,
because it kind of because it was captured so well. I was like, did they do that in post or not?
No, that's all in camera. It's all in camera. The only thing we did in post was remove, like when his heart's ripped out and there's a vine holding it. There's puppet rods, like it's just practical. So there's puppet rods.
Sure.
So we just removed that, but everything else is in camera. That reflection, what I wanted to do with that was I wanted to see the pumpkin and the reflection slither out of the shot.
Oh, okay.
But there's only so much we could do. We shot this just in April, so this movie was just captured in April this year.
Oh wow!
It was supposed to be filmed in the fall, but because of the strikes, we couldn't. And then so the only way we could release it for this Halloween was to shoot it in the spring, cheating at spring for fall. So we just filmed this movie in April, and then it was literally edited in a few weeks because of the visual effects. And it was such a tight deadline. Like I just delivered this movie like a month ago.
That's a quick turnaround, but that's great though, because there is so many practical effects in this. I guess you didn't have to wait around too much for VFX to come back for you.
There's a lot of VFX. I mean, there is a lot of VFX. There's about 150 or so digital effects. You only see the entire pumpkin and it's head to toe entirety. You only see it full CGI about 4 or 5 times. It's mostly a puppet that's augmented, but there's a ton of like vines added to the puppet, and there's a lot of like invisible stuff that you wouldn't see, a lot of removing things, and just that reflection in the blood of Kevin's head. That was just one of the shots that was a dream that I had to let go because we don't have the time, don't have the budget. There's more important things to do, right? But this movie was very much made in the spirit of a low budget indie horror film. It's cool that we had the support of Hulu and Disney. It was originally 20th Century, then they were bought by Disney, and then it became like a Hulu project. So even though it's within this big studio system, technically, our budget wasn't very big. This was put together based on a short film, and they give these opportunities to these short filmmakers. It was still a small budget with a very tight windows, and they were very hands off. So it felt to me like I've made indie horror films on a low budget before, and this felt just like any of the indie horror films I've made in the past. And to me, that's
kind of
okay.
refreshing to hear,
Yeah. And to me, it's okay that it's not, it's not perfect. Like you can see the latex, you can feel the handmade nature of this film. And I think that's okay because it's part of what I'm trying to celebrate with this movie is those handmade indie films.
So, yeah. It reminds me of early 90s monster movie. Like that's what you want to see. You know what I mean? It's a movie. I think a lot of us grew up with.
Exactly.
I want to talk about a couple of my favorite characters. I'll get the big, obvious one out of the way because even before we started recording, we started talking about it a little bit, and I got the feeling there's a pretty cool story behind this. But you got the great Chris Elliott in this, just one of the funniest humans to walk the earth. How the heck did that end up? Like you kind of hinted at it with us, but I think the listeners would be pretty psyched to learn how Chris Elliott ended up in here. I fanboyed out when like whenever we were saying we were, you were going to be gracious enough to join us here. I was like, oh God, I can't wait to ask about Chris Elliott.
I'm the same. I'm the same. I'm a huge fan. I grew up loving Groundhog Day and Something About Mary and all of his films, Scary Movie is hilarious. I actually, when I wrote the part of that character, Earl, my mind, I was thinking this, we need someone well known for this. It's a very small part. We only need this person for a day or two. Like it needs to be someone big. And in my mind, I was thinking someone like Christopher Lloyd, someone like that. Because I grew up loving Back to the Future, like someone like that who's iconic that can go in there. And then so the way it worked, once we got into casting with our casting director, Lindsay Weismuller, that was the mandate. It's like, who can we get that's a name? And she put forward. She goes out, the casting director goes out. They have a relationship with all the agents, right, in Hollywood and wherever, New York. And they went out and sort of, talked to some people, asked around, and she came back with a few names. And Chris Elliott was one of them. I was just like, oh my God, is there any way? My whole strategy was, this again, low budget movie. Everybody on this movie worked, at the same level in terms of what they were being paid. There was no one being paid more than anyone else. It was all very like, can we convince people to be involved in this fun, weird Halloween movie? And my approach was to get on a Zoom with them because the way that I work is I storyboard and I build animatics for almost every shot. For this movie, I storyboarded every single shot. And I did it super early. Wow. I started with the kill. So I storyboarded every kill. So my whole approach was get me on a Zoom. Let me talk to them. because once they see how I'm planning this, they might jump on board. So that was the approach with Chris too. It's I got onto a Zoom, we talked, and he liked the script, and I showed him the previs sequences I'd made for his death. And once he saw that, it's like, oh, he just knew, like, okay, this is actually already all planned out. He could see his own death, which is crazy. He's trying to explain that verbally to somebody. It's gonna be hard to visualize, but I'm showing him in optically accurate storyboards how he's gonna like shoot himself in the head. And then he was just like, and I live in Schitt's Creek, as I mentioned. And he's on Schitt's Creek. And so when we first started talking, I was like, hey man, I live in Schitt's Creek, and we were laughing. And one thing he said was, I just don't want to play a cliche hillbilly. I want to have some kind of an accent or do something with my voice that's just something I haven't done or we haven't really seen before. He had all these funny ideas, he wanted to be a lobster fisherman or like Tom Hardy and the Revenant, all jarbled up. And to me, Chris Elliott is like, he's like his oddball genius is what you want to capture. It's like those, something about Mary, the whitehead on his eyeball, that character with all the blotches, that was his idea.
Oh yeah.
That's him bringing that to the Farley brothers, saying, I want to do this. And so I'm very collaborative, and he had these ideas, and I was just like, dude, this is anything you want to do, we're going to do it. And it was just a great conversation. That was it. And then I got the email. It's like, he's in,
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was like
That's
that.
so cool.
Each actor I got was the same. I showed them the storyboards, showed them everything. And then I got the email. They're in. Every person I talked to agreed to do the movie.
That's great.
I think it's
because I storyboard everything, and because they were able to see the planning that was involved. I wasn't winging this. This was very carefully designed. For better or for worse, it was, every shot was designed. And so when they met me and they could see the plan, they thought, okay, this might work.
Yeah, that sounds really attractive too. Like if you're going to do a small budget film and somebody comes to you and says, I have your role planned out. It's going to take this many days. It's going to look like this. We're going to do this. And you go, okay, yeah, I can commit to that. That's easy. I'm there. In for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because filmmaking is a pain in the ass. He's a legend. He's a comedic icon. I think he's been, he started on the David Letterman show when he was old. They've been there.
Yeah.
They've seen it all. They know, they can smell bullshit a mile away. And I think the secret is just to actually, for me, it's to not try to bullshit them. It's like to put forward something visually that they can just see. The other thing is I had the designs of the pumpkin, and I hired this Spanish designer that does all of Guillermo del Toro's monsters. He's like he lives in Barcelona. He did this. Right, he did the ZBrush rendering of this creature. So once people started to see the monster and they're like, oh, it's not a jack-o'-lantern. It's like that thing. Cool. And so they could just, it really helped seal the deal.
Justin, just curious, when you storyboard everything, when did you start doing that, or what was like what made you start? I guess, where did you hear of that before? So, because it seems so convincing and effective. Like, was that inspired by somebody else? I'm just curious about that.
Oh, I'm looking around to see if I have any examples of this. It's actually really cool. So about 19 years ago, I was directing a TV show, and the opening title sequence was all green screen. And I bought this program way back then called FrameForge Previs Studio. And it's a storyboarding program for directors or DOPs. There's like two different licenses, and it allows you to build your environment in a 3D space that's accurate, right? To scale. It's really easy. You just build. You measure the room, you build your environment, and then you can dial in the sensor of your camera, and it has the Red cameras, the Alexa cameras, it has everything. You just dial in the sensor, and then you can plug in your lenses, and it has all the lens kits that you can imagine, all the anamorphics, all the different brands. And so you can put in your sensor, your lenses, and then you can drop in characters, you can drop in 3D elements, and you can shoot coverage and actually build a plan of storyboards. You can also do previs animatics that are optically accurate. So if I'm using let's say it's an Arri camera, it's a mini with Hawk anamorphics, and I got an 18, 35, 25, 130 millimeter lens kit. I'm using those lenses in the plan in the actual 3D space, and it's accurate. And so I started doing that 20 years ago almost. And so I'm really fast with this program. It's like a second nature, and it's old. It's not a new program. FrameForge Previs Studio. And every project I do, I use it in different ways. I use it to quickly put together ideas and storyboards. I also do second unit on Thanksgiving with Eli Roth. So I did Thanksgiving last year.
Yeah.
Him. And I'd done a bunch of TV shows with him. And I got hired to do that because of the way that I storyboard and plan, because he discovered that on a TV show we were doing together. And that's how I do it. So I can build storyboards or previs animatics, but for this movie Carved, I just did storyboards for every shot.
That's so cool, man. It's obviously so effective. I love hearing that backstory on it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'll see if I can dig up an example to show you guys, because it's like watching a cartoon. Like, it looks animated, and it has when I say it's optically accurate, what I mean is you can dial in the f-stop, and then your depth of field is accurate within the lens. So your blurred background and your foreground, it's all exactly. When I'm on set making the movie, like if I'm directing a scene, I've actually already directed it just virtually in my room, and I've tried every angle. And I'm through a process of elimination, I know what I don't want. So when I'm on set, it's very specific, not because of any other reason, except I've been here, I've done it, and I've tried everything. And so it's very hard for other people to convince me to change my plan. Yeah, because I've already tried it. But
you've made every movie twice.
I've been there, and it's weird. Sometimes I'll step on a set and I'll be like, "Oh, this is like deja vu," because I've spent so many hours in that virtual environment.
Yeah. Yeah, you said, if you already have all your coverage down, it would be really hard for somebody to want you to add another shot to it, because you're like, no, I already have it. I know it's all in there.
Well, yeah, or to change the plan. Usually what's asked is, can you reduce the shots, because my shot lists are pretty big. We'll be like 30, 40 shots set up and people, you get producers and people asking, can you reduce this? This seems crazy. And then they learn quickly that I can actually do it because I don't overshoot. I'll just get enough takes and I move on pretty quick. And I know, because I usually do my own editing, I know what I need and what I don't need. So even if a take's not perfect, as long as I have that perfect piece I know I'm going to use, I'll move on. And so I do move very, very quick through a film. And we shot this whole film in 20 days. Very fast. Very fast for a feature film with puppets and stunts and monsters and to me, if I didn't storyboard it the way I did, it would be almost impossible. Now, the difference between this project and other projects is my DOP, Sevdia Castrati. She is an incredible cinematic genius who sat with me and helped storyboard with me. So I've never had that before. So my DOP Sevdia, she when we're on set, because she was with me storyboarding, she's the only person who I can share my brain with. So the two of us can run our teams seamlessly. That's how I storyboard. And for Thanksgiving, I do a lot of animatics. Like, I actually build not storyboards, but full previs animatics that we use to shoot a lot of the kills and a lot of the suspense sequences.
Oh, awesome.
I mean, that makes so much sense. Having actually, we did an episode on Thanksgiving last year, when it came out last year, and love that movie. Had an absolute blast. We went and saw it in the theaters, and it makes a lot of sense because the way that movie is so like, the kills are so set up, right? It's almost like, hey, here's this set piece, here's this really cool gory kill. Like, there's the chaos set pieces of like everyone storming into the store and everything, and that just makes so much sense now, hearing the backstory around like storyboarding it, like you get the way you storyboarded all that stuff. It's like, yeah, that's why some of those scenes work so tremendously well. Such a fun movie, by the way. I was going to ask about you're working with Eli Roth. I'm a big fan and absolutely loved Thanksgiving.
It's awesome. Eli's amazing. He really is. He's super smart. He's super collaborative. He's actually like a really kind person. I really have a lot of respect for him, and I learned a lot from him about collaborating with people. He just hires good people and then just trusts them without micromanaging. And he's very quick to make decisions. He doesn't doubt himself. There's a lot of great directing, ideas that I took from him moving into Carved. But yeah, I love working with Eli. We've done 8 projects together.
He seems like, wow, he seems like such a genuine genre fan, like a genuine genre nerd. You know what I mean? Which I think is endearing to a lot of insufferable psychotic level horror nerds like we are. So
Eli is like a sommelier of Italian giallo. He's like he knows.
He's very into giallo. He got us into this whole. Actually, I listened and I heard him on another podcast or something like that talking about American giallo flicks, and it got me down this this rabbit hole for a couple of months, and this was, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago. And I actually, you know what? I think it might have been on Quentin Tarantino's podcast.
Oh, yes.
And
Video Archives, yeah.
And Video Archives. And he started talking about American Giallo flicks. And that got me for a good 6 months. Every time I watched a movie, I was like, wait a second, is this an American Giallo? I have myself convinced everything fell under the subheader of American Giallo. But I do want to talk about the cast a little bit, because the cast in this is fantastic, and there's some new faces, some familiar faces. We mentioned real quickly Elvis Nolasco, who plays. I'll admit I have not watched the whole thing yet. I'm about halfway through it. But he plays the, I think, antagonist in the titular, we'll say, Mr. Crockett in Mr. Crockett, which just released also on Hulu. He's fantastic. He is a big part of probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which is the beginning, which I'm a sucker for a spooky barn. I just love a spooky Halloween barn, a Halloween barn dance. I mean, if I could be buried at a Halloween barn dance, if you could scatter my ashes at a Halloween barn dance, I'm a happy camper. And I love that scene. And a couple of really, really funny lines too, that I won't spoil, but I got a chuckle. I mean, you got a chuckle out of me every time he got pissed off for someone interrupting him. Just that something about fury just simmering right below the surface of like a kind of genial attitude is gonna crack me up every time.
I wanted to ask about his death. In his death, it's rather complicated and protracted, and we see it happen a couple times. But in the full version, he is thrown into a substation. Is this a Halloween 4 reference?
Where a body gets yeeted. Anytime a body gets yeeted, I assume it's Halloween.
No, you know what? It's actually...
Yeah. We also enjoy that.
I did see that. And Tango and Cash. Do you remember that movie, Tango and Cash, where the guy in prison thrown up against the thing? I looked at all those movies just for visual reference, but no, the idea was just, how can we kill the power in this village? And these historical, these historical pioneer village always do have some sort of like a, power transformer setup. So, but yeah, Elvis is great. And the reason he's in both films, because we have the same producers. So the same producing team that did Mr. Crockett is the same team that did Carved. Because Mr. Crockett was also a short film that went through the short Huluween program. So the Worthen Brooks group of producers, David Worthen Brooks is like the head producer. There's a team of people, Jenna, Arby. That team of producers produced both films. Mm-hmm. And we were looking for someone for that AJ character, the reporter. And they had just filmed Mr. Crockett, and they were telling me how incredible his performance is and how he's like got this method approach. And they kept talking about his performance. And I was like, do you think, we were looking for someone who can bring something unique to this role? And it was suggested. Then I, again, got into a Zoom with him, showed him storyboards, and that was it. It was like, okay, you're going to be in 2 Huluween movies this year. You're going to be Mr. Huluween, but that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. See, I caught, like I said, started watching it after I watched Carved. Admittedly, had a couple 2 beers, started getting a little sleepy, didn't get to finish it. So I'm finishing the rest of Mr. Crockett tonight, but really the first, 25 minutes that I watched, I absolutely loved his performance. Obviously, Peyton Elizabeth Lee as Kira, Corey Fogelmanis as Cody. New performers to me, both did a fantastic job. They're kind of the protagonist, love interest, if you will. Barb, who's played by Carla Jimenez, I think a lot of people would know her from The Mick. I remember her from is it? Oh my gosh! And now all I want to say is Raising Arizona, which is not right. It's what was their sitcom that she was on?
Raising Hope.
Raising Hope. It's not Raising Arizona. That's the great Nick Cage. It was Raising Hope, Raising Hope is a fantastic show. I recognize her immediately from that. She's very funny in this and provides some heart as well as some comic relief. I did want to call out one particular character because I am an absolute sucker for a hateable not even antagonist, but just that person you're rooting for them to be murdered, right? I love that character, whether you're talking about Sleepaway Camp or any of the big like slasher franchises. Always have somebody who you're like, can't wait till that person gets it. And in this one, it was Shane, played by is it Jonah Lees?
That's right, Jonah Lees. Yeah,
Jonah Lees, fantastic, hateable but funny. Can't wait till you get murdered character. Nailed that role.
Yeah, he's actually going to be playing John Lennon in an upcoming Beatles film as well.
Oh wow,
he's actually a super talented guy, a British actor. His audition was just really good. It was just really funny. And that character on the page was sort of pitched as he's the harbinger of death or of doom. Everything we're gonna die. Everything's like he's the voice of like just doom. Where the Kira character, played by Peyton, is very much more of a creative thinker and is always thinking of problem solving, and trying to help that way. But yeah, he just had a great audition. It was really funny, because he just played it like this theater kid, and just created that character, and it's just a great audition. Same with Carla. Carla actually didn't audition. Carla Menez, I just loved her work, and then met her, and her whole thing was. I have a bum knee, so I can't really run. I'm like, the character has a bum knee. That's okay. That's fine. So
I actually wrote that character with a bum knee. What a coincidence.
Yeah. The line where she says, "I'd run, but I have a bum knee," and I'm like, no, it's okay. Yeah, she was great too. Such a unique talent for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Peyton's amazing. Peyton Elizabeth Lee one day I think is going to run a studio. She might be the president of Disney one day. She was only 19 years old when we filmed. She just turned 20 in May. She is so smart, and she's so like professional for someone who's 19. It just blew my mind because I was a hot mess when I was 19, 20 years old, and she is so unbelievably professional and intelligent. And what's interesting about a Killer Pumpkin movie is when you're on set trying to work out these scenes, there's a lot of like logic to work out. I mean, it's all in the script, but there's moments where it's like, oh, would I do this? But wouldn't the pumpkin and would it? And then her and I would get into these kind of not debates, but these like, these logic conversations about, breaking down what makes sense. And a lot of times she was right. I'd be like, she's right. I can't argue with her. You know what? We're going to do it Peyton's way. And that happened again and again and again. I just have so much respect for her. At the end of the shoot, I told her, you need to direct. And, it's so obvious that you're a director. You have all the instincts. She cares about the way things are shot. She questions like coverage and stuff and like the right questions. And, so she actually just went and filmed her first short film last weekend, the day after our premiere. So we had our world premiere at Screamfest in LA last Tuesday, and we all were partying. We went to the Saddle Ranch on Sunset afterwards. The whole team partying, open bar, just wild. And she is like, "Okay, I'm going home because tomorrow morning I'm going to start directing my movie." I'm just like, so much respect for this person. I love her. I think she's going to be, she was Andy Mack. She's been a part of the Disney team forever. She was the new Doogie. She's in Prom Pact and all these like Disney movies. I think I got her right at the right time when she wanted to try something different. Yeah. And I felt really grateful to get her on this movie.
There again, she's playing the character that you wrote. She's herself almost, where it's like she's the most professional. She was a great actor, but they're like, you're not an actor, but you're a great director. In the movie, that's one of the lines.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. I kept saying to the team, like, we need to cast somebody that I believe could be a writer director. Like they have to have that behind the eye. And she just had it. She didn't audition. We just talked. I just looked at her work and, I just talked to her and it was like, I believe that you could be a director and a writer. Like it's not a stretch to me. And then actually working with her, I actually didn't know that when I first talked to her. I just needed that I needed to believe that in the audition process. And then once I worked with her and talked to her, it's like, oh, you actually are this person. Very cool.
Yeah.
And Corey is such a good actor too. I'm like, he just simply had the best audition. I wasn't familiar with his work. And I wasn't familiar with the fact that he has like 5 million followers on social media. Like I had no idea that this kid, he's not a kid, he's in his 20s, that this amazing actor had such a portfolio and fan base. I had no idea. I just saw his audition. I was like, oh, I believe that this is an actor who would get plucked out of a small town and put into Broadway. And again, super professional, awesome, smart person.
Yeah, I mean, I think for anyone who, I mean, you see it on social media, or God knows, we'll be in a few weeks at Thanksgiving with our families, hearing everyone's dumbass uncle talking about this generation and how it's fucked and they don't work and all that stuff. Like, you could not be more wrong. This generation is going to beat our fucking asses. They are so savvy. They're so smart. And like I see with younger family members and man, these kids who are 18, 19, 20 in their early 20s are just man, these kids are freaking sharp, man. And they know how to, they're just so much more media and business savvy. Sounds silly to say, but than I ever was at that age. It's pretty intriguing.
Smart, savvy, and sober. They don't party. We had at a rap party, all the young people were just drinking water and just being respectful, normal human beings, where the casting, the rest of the crew were a hot mess. And I'm looking around going, this is bad.
And that's a problem for me. And I'm going to take exception with that, because not only do I work in the beer, I'm a beer marketer, but I like to party, and it pisses me off, and they need to suck it up and start drinking aggressively in fields and having near-death experiences like I did at their age.
Agreed.
No, good.
Does it not make you feel better though that like once you get into the the retirement home, that you're going to be in there microdosing and your nurses will be sober? And
I'm not going to be
making sure
I'm going to be
of?
fucking macrodosing, my dude. Yeah, when I'm getting ready to check out, I'm just going full brain melter. But yes, I do feel good that there will be responsible younger people in charge.
Yeah, you'll have good trip partners is what I'm saying.
That's true. Well, one other person I got to bring up, because he's so funny in this. And I think, oh boy, who was it in the chat? I got to go back a little bit. Oh, it was one of our patrons, Dan, in the chat, talked about he really liked the visual of you storyboarding a guy in a corn costume smoking a joint in the field and like listening to like stoner rap in a Walkman, which sounds very fun. And I'm gonna butcher his name. I apologize. It's Matty Cardopel. Is it Cardopel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carteropel. Yeah.
Carteropel. I'm sorry. Yeah. Hilarious. I mean, immediately recognize. I think he lingered in a lot of people's mind as a really funny, if not, somewhat brief showing in a few episodes of Stranger Things, but has been in a ton of stuff. And just embodies the lovable, fuck up stoner really, really well.
Yeah, and what's ironic is that he doesn't smoke anything ever. He's like super straight edge.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You
might as well have told me
smoke.
Santa Claus doesn't exist. That's pretty fucked up of you to say. No, I'm just kidding.
He's just perfected that character. That's not really who he is. He is a really, really funny person. Again, really professional, but just knows how to be funny. And he's the one that I would just let the camera roll, and he would just give me like 20, 30 options for each take.
I could see that.
I'd go over schedule every time. Every time we were filming with him, we'd go over schedule because I would just let it go. I'm like, don't cut, just let it go. And he would just go again and again, and he would change up every time. Like his lines, I'll be your bitch. And what are you doing back there, bud? Or like, oh, hey, bird. Like none of that was in the script. None of that was in the script.
Funny.
He just did it.
I'll be your bitch is so funny to just like resign yourself
so
like
quickly.
He's been a fuck up. Yeah, he's been a fuck up the entire movie, and like he just woke up out of a coma from fucking smoking weed, and he's only known that the pumpkin has existed for 5 minutes at max, and then it's immediately just resigning to it's his new overlord.
So other takes he would say like, please don't kill me. I've never been to Burning Man. Please don't kill me. I've never been sailing. And he just kept going. Please don't kill me. And I would just sit there. And then in the end, we just try different ones. We'd bring in different people. Say, what's funnier? And just try. And then obviously, that just got the biggest laughs every time. I'll be your bitch. I'm like, is this too much? I mean, is this? But you can't deny when a room full of people are constantly laughing. I'm like, well, let's just go with it. It's funny.
Yeah,
let's just go with it.
Yeah, it's a pumpkin, and he's volunteering it. It's like nobody's calling him a bitch. He's volunteering himself. He's like, "I'm your bitch."
The pumpkin takes him up on it, though. And that's the
Right,
best.
yeah.
It's like,
It's true.
he does, man. He
It's
makes,
true.
he makes him his bitch. And then, well, yeah, that's the end of him. But yeah.
It's so true. You know what? The other line he had that was so great was when he goes, "Oh, we make pumpkin pie too." Oh no, I should have told you that. I never would have written that. Like, to me, writing that, I would have been like, that sounds cheesy. Like, that's so stupid.
You wouldn't expect a not smoker to think of, oh, a pothead's gonna be thinking about food at this time. It's like,
Yeah.
Oh, I should have told you that. Like, oh, dude, it's so funny. And like, you know what? I'm just gonna lean into this. Like, I didn't imagine the film being so like over the top like that. You know, when I was writing it, it was much more grounded. But these actors, you know, Jonah and Maddie and DJ and Chris Elliott, every time they came in with this character, I'm like, oh, you know, it's, you know, this movie wants to be a comedy more than it was written to be. I just there was an instinct and a decision to just lean into that a little bit. I think during the shooting, I was like, you know what, we're all laughing. This movie's a comedy. It's a killer pumpkin.
Well, you got the right people, right? So like, obviously, you just let them do what they naturally do, and it played to your advantage, which is, you know, in the moment probably a challenge to like let go of that, but in retrospect, you're probably like, yeah, of course, I had all these funny people, I'm going to let them be funny.
Yeah, the idea, the way it was pitched to everybody was, if you look at movies like Ghostbusters that are comedy, there's elements of horror, but it's comedy. Those characters aren't acting goofy. They're not like, they don't know they're in a comedy movie. They're pretty grounded. And that's how I always saw it. But then once we started filming, I'm like, oh no, there is an element to this. It's a little bit more like, it is a little bit more in that Evil Dead or like Army of Darkness sort of campy comedy where it does fit this movie. And so the tone of it definitely shifted more comedy as we were shooting. Which I like. You know, that's what this movie should be. If it's a killer pumpkin, it's so inherently ridiculous. For us to take it too seriously would have been the wrong idea, especially with these comedic actors. Yeah, you know?
I immediately thought of this when I was watching it, and I thought to myself, this was before obviously you were going to join the episode here, and I thought to myself, wait, I want to reach out to somebody who was involved in making this movie, because if they did not refer to the acronym PPOV, which is of course pumpkin point of view, I will cut my right hand off if they did not use PPOV. So please confirm for me, and if you didn't, lie to me that you said that on set.
Right. Well, PPOV was the name of the camera that we used. That's a lie. No, we didn't. That I wish we did. That was just POV, pumpkin POV. PPOV was so much better. Damn it! It's an opportunity.
What inspired the vision, like the way the pumpkin sees? It's like Anaconda almost.
It's Jaws, mostly. Well, Jaws, Tremors, and Child's Play are the three. Okay. All three of those, well, especially Jaws and especially Child's Play, all those two in particular relied on that POV because of budgetary restraints. You know, if you just cut to that shot, you can just run and you know you're the creature. And in Jaws, it was like they had to use that, and then it became such an iconic way to put the audience in the mind's eye of a monster. Chucky did the same thing. That animatronic doll was very difficult, and they said, you know, the director was talking about, just as long as that POV works, you can do so much more of suspense. And then Tremors leaned into it as well. And for us, it was like, it's a no-brainer. This thing is low to the ground. It's super cool. It's a way to like catch people and chase them. Super fun. And our DOP, Sevdia, she actually used a piece of glass, and she used a brush with some Vaseline and drew these lines and streaks. And she put this like orange fabric around the edge to create the orange vignette. To give it that, like, you know, that handmade feel that you're inside the pumpkin.
I think that's what they did in, was it Madman? They did that in. But yeah, the old Vaseline on the lens trick. I love that. I mean, talk about a throwback to classic horror. I mean,
yeah, that was a technique to soften blemishes, right? Back in like the 50s, 60s, 40s. For us, we kept the center clean, and we did streaks. So it's like, you know, it sort of feathers or tapers off, and these streaks to kind of, you know, give you a focal point in the middle of the frame.
Yep.
And then we went too far and had to like wipe it off. But that's, you know, just every decision was, can this feel like handmade, old school? And then in the edit, you're like, okay, we tried our best. Now we need to bring in some CGI to actually make the rest of it work. But that's why it's a blend for the most part.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I did not. We've joked about this. I mean, you talked about Drew, the Goosebumps. Well, we were talking about the books in particular, but I'm a huge fan of the Goosebumps TV series from the 90s. I grew up watching that. And Are You Afraid of the Dark as well? Like I grew up watching those. These were some of the things that got me into horror at a very young age. And we've talked about these episodes before, especially around Halloween time with some of our guests. And we have referred to some of those episodes as, quote, painfully Canadian, like so Canadian. It's almost inexplicable that it is that Canadian. Like they are doing the act, like there's and for of course us down in the States, like we the accents and that sort of thing, like we pick up on it. But as a kid, we never noticed it for a second. This I did not pick up on, this being a Canadian production for a moment until the Bryan Adams reference, and then it became abundantly clear. There was no.
It's not. Yeah. You know why? Because it's not a Canadian production. It's we shot it in Lexington, Kentucky, and it's produced by a team.
Gotcha.
Produced by a team down in LA. It's just me and me and my co-writer Cheryl are Canadian.
Okay, gotcha.
And the only other Canadians I brought with me were Alan Cook and Jonathan Craig that did the puppet creature design. Like they're the fabricator. They're the guys I work with to do special makeup effects, special effects.
That's who I was going to ask. That was my next question is who was on that, because it's some tremendous work here, obviously with the puppets and the practical effects. I wanted to ask about who was responsible for it.
Yeah, there's Jonathan Craig and Alan Cook are two of my closest friends that we've done a bunch of movies together. Jonathan's one of my best friends in the whole world. And they worked with me on the short film 6 years ago. We also did a feature film called Making Monsters where they did all the effects. We also did, John was in the original short Carved. He plays the farmer at the beginning with the bad teeth and the pot belly.
Oh, yeah.
And in this movie, Carved, he plays the camera guy. It's with Elvis. So he's the camera guy that gets the vine through his mouth. That's John. So John is an incredible artist, special makeup artist, and he does puppetry and all this stuff. And then Alan is a seasoned special effects artist that just came off of Dune 2 right before our shoot. So he did special effects on Dune, and he did the It films. He did a lot of stuff with Guillermo del Toro, like Pacific Rim and what's the series with the vampires?
Cabinet of I was going to say Cabinet of Curiosities.
He worked on that too. No, the other one with the vampires where the mouths open up. Am I thinking of? Anyway. He did a bunch of effects on that, but he's been doing it for 30 years. So those two guys were the only Canadians I brought down with me to Kentucky. We filmed in Harrodsburg at this real pioneer village called Shaker Village of Pleasant Hill, which is a 3,000 acre historical village, the Shaker Village. And so we went down to Kentucky to shoot. So it's very much not really a Canadian film besides the writers and the makeup people. But yeah, the Bryan Adams joke came from my co-writer Cheryl, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah,
pretty funny. I mean, they're about to die, and he's like, "Everything I do it for you." And only certain people will get those jokes. But in all of our screenings, where I've seen this with an audience, people laugh out loud at that. So it feels like it works.
Listen, I have a soft spot. I had my first kiss to a Bryan Adams song. All right, so it's as I'm going to assume 70% of people my age did. No, I for whatever reason, like that just clicked for me at that moment. I was like, someone's Canadian, because otherwise you're picking. Yeah, as much as I enjoy Bryan Adams, you're picking something different, right? Unless you are
it was so hot in the 90s, like that like all the references, Kevin Costner, Bryan Adams, these were very popular people in the mid 90s. Like 1993, I mean, it was one of the hottest musical. Like when did Robin Hood come out? Because that was the big song in Robin Hood, the Kevin Costner film. That was huge.
Prince of Thieves, or no, what was it? What's it called? Not Prince of Thieves. Yeah, Prince of Thieves, right? Yeah, that sounds right. 93. I mean, it was huge. I did want to ask you this because I actually forgot halfway through, right? So having, working in, I work in marketing in the beer industry. So like marketing a lot to right, 21-year-olds, 21 to 24-year-old, people who grew up in the who were born in the late 90s, or perhaps in some instances like born in the early 90s, grew up in the late 90s. Like a lot of that nostalgic stuff is obviously really, really huge right now. And I actually, about halfway through this movie, forgot, maybe not halfway, let's say a third of the way through. I'm not sure when the quote happens, but about a third of the way through, I forgot it was set in the past, because the way that a lot of the kids are dressed is so similar, right, to kind of the fashion of today and that kind of retro fashion, that until somebody said, and I think it's Barb who has the line where somebody says, "Do you have a cellular phone?" And she goes, "What do you think? We're fucking millionaires?" Or something like that. Which was, and then I kind of laughed out loud, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is set in, the early to mid 90s. Was that a conscious decision? Like you wanted that aesthetic, or you mentioned you wanted to call back to those movies of that era? How much of it was that, and how much of it was like, it makes it easy for us to take the cell phone thing out of the equation?
50-50. We had, over the course of the 6 years of development, there was about 7 or 8 different versions of this movie that were written, completely different versions, different characters, different places, different concepts entirely. And we had many that were contemporary. And the stories evolved around, you have to incorporate a cell phone. If there's an emergency, you have to incorporate the cell phone. Or you have to do that stupid thing of like, there's no service in here. It's just, unless your
that's
movie's
one of my favorite tropes, though. I'll be honest with you, I love that trope.
Overdone.
Oh no, I don't got any bars.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It makes me cringe every time I see it. And then, we had versions of this where, there was a version of this where the pumpkin was like in a Tesla and people were hacking it. At some point, I was looking at these scripts going, this isn't going to feel timeless. It's going to be aged out really quick. As soon as you show a cell phone, I wanted to make something that felt timeless. And that was the idea. If these people are if they're actors in a historical village, they're interpreters interpreting the 1700s. They're in historical outfits. Some of them are. So but they're also, it's set in the 90s as well. If we set it in the 90s, it seems more timeless to me. It just feels like it could be, this movie could have been around since the 90s. And I also love the idea. I love the idea that it's a celebration of those films, and I wanted to make the movie with the same 90s techniques, relying on film techniques that would have existed in the 90s. That to me was a big part of the pitch. Let's get rid of the cell phones. Let's make it more timeless. Every decision was about making it feel timeless. Now,
sure,
some people will say it's not timeless. Whether we achieve that or not is a different thing. But my pitch and my goal was definitely to make something that felt like it always could have been there. And every decision was leaning towards that. Like the same lenses were used on Aliens. Like the same, we tried to use filtration. Tried to use music that wasn't like, I didn't want to use like 80s synth music. I wanted just to feel classic. And setting it in the 90s was just a part of that. Another decision, and it got rid of the cell phones. That way, it's just like Tremors or Thing, where it's just a group of people trapped trying to get from point A to point B, just trying to survive. That to me is what made the film exciting, as opposed to opening up the world with social media, with cell phones, with police. It's just keeping it contained. To me, and the simplicity of that is what it needed to be.
Sure.
Yeah. That way, once you cut the power, the cops can't be called. No help is coming, and it's just isolation. So
that's how it would have been. That's how it would have been in the 90s. You would have been screwed if this happened in the 90s. Today's world, you just call the police, and the movie's over.
Right. Yeah. You send a tweet saying, "Hey, this all sucks," and then you go live on Instagram and say, "Hey, this all sucks."
This all sucks.
Somebody else calls the police.
My wife says all the time. She's like, "Why don't they just call the cops?" I was like, "Because then it would be a 5-minute movie."
Yeah.
And that's a different script and a different story, a different journey. Maybe a much bigger budget. You're involving more actors. It's just like, yeah, you can, but. Me and the simplicity of it, like Tremors, it was always pitched as Tremors, as a Tremors sort of homage. I love it. I love Tremors. I love the walkie-talkies. The fact they're trying to get to the mountains where there's rocks. Like, it's just, how do we get to the mountains? Okay, they're going to dig holes and they're going to use the tractor. But then it's a cat and mouse involving getting from point A to point B. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted for Carve, But we don't have the same resources. This is much smaller. Even though Tremors was made in 1990, this Carve is a much smaller movie, budgetarily speaking, and in terms of resources. much smaller.
Everything was at that time. I mean, you talked about this, this being inspired to a certain extent by Gremlins 2. And, Gremlins 2 was a $40 million movie that Joe Dante spent. I mean, and I think that's even conservative. Like, that's just not how movies are made anymore, right? But yeah, I mean, this looks it looks fantastic. I love the vibe. It actually reminded me of, in the best way, it reminded me a little bit of some of the like Charles Band, like the better Charles Band kind of monster movies of that early 90s era that I grew up, kind of falling in love with.
Yeah, to like Head of the Class, there's some Head of the Class vibes. Or
Head of the Family.
Head of the Family.
Yeah.
Head of the Family. Yeah, there's some Head of the Family vibes there.
Head of the Family. I haven't seen that.
Oh, that is a fantastic.
Head of the Family.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Head of the Family. Now, it is again, it's a low budget Charles Band flick, but it's really fun. And this was, we've talked about in the podcast before, it was one of the video store rentals. I mean, I probably rented that movie 20 times when I was a kid.
Yeah. It also has a preeminent yeet in it of body getting thrown down the stairs.
It does.
Yeah, it fucking rules.
I gotta watch that. I've not seen that movie. I'm looking at the poster. I'm like, yes, that's something I gotta watch.
Oh, fun performances.
And I ask too. So there's an element of horror that I think we jumped over a little bit. So the element of not having the cell phone is a huge piece. And then there's also, I don't know if this is a decision, the limited firepower. So the only people who had a gun was the farmer, which makes sense out there in the country. You had the shotgun, but other than that, everybody was armed with the knives they were going to carve with, and that was like so limiting. And you only see towards the end where, I guess my question, it's a question and two questions. You see the shotgun wound on the jack-o'-lantern, the monster. So he does get hurt by firepower, by traditional means, like hurt him. Is that the theory?
Yeah, because it's still just a grounded sentient. It's still just a grounded creature. It's not a supernatural creature. Okay. It's just a mutant. So if you were to shoot, they ultimately they're able to destroy it because it's not supernatural. It's a living thing. A shotgun, I imagine that the shotgun blast takes a little wind out of its sails. Like, it does start to move a bit slower. Like, you can see it when it's chasing her. It's moving with a limp. And when it comes in, and when it comes into the barn at the end, it's slower. And they're able to attack it, the three of them, and it's weaker because of that gunshot blast.
Gotcha. Yeah. Or you said they were able to kill it, or do they?
Well,
okay.
That's the thing. You have to you watch and find out.
The whole idea that toxic waste, listen, I'm painfully close to 40 years old. So I grew up in the 90s watching, not just the Toxic Avenger, but things like Captain Planet and stuff like that. So toxic waste was our nuclear radiation. It was the thing that turned something into a monster, not unlike in the, mid-century, black and white monster movies where, radiation from nuclear testing or fallout turned an ant into a giant killer ant. Our, Jack Frosts of the world, if you will. I'm already starting to think about holiday horror, even though we're still in October. That's what turns a pumpkin into a mutant killer pumpkin, or that's what turns a snowman into a mutant killer sentient snowman and combines it with the DNA of a serial killer. There are two tropes in this movie that I'm a big fan of, like classic horror tropes, right? That was one of them, which is nuclear waste or not nuclear waste, but just some sort of toxic waste is our, nuclear fallout or whatever from the 90s. And the other one, which is at the end, and I'm not really even spoiling anything, but whenever they have the kind of final showdown, and then they walk outside after the final showdown and it's light out, that is my other favorite trope. Is the second the the risk is mitigated, at least for the moment, the sun comes up. I love that trope. Something about walking outside after an evening of adventure and battling monsters, and you think, at least you think, or perhaps in reality, you have gotten the upper hand, and you walk outside, and the night is over and the sun's come up. I just, something about that just puts such a perfect bow on a 90s, late 80s, early 90s horror movie for me. Was that conscious? Was that just like, hey, that's just kind of how
it's definitely conscious. It's like, walking out of a rave or like a late night party and the birds are chirping. It's like it's like that feeling of like you've been through hell and the lights, I think that was definitely part of it. Schedule wise, logistically, that does help a lot. I mean, we shot this almost entirely in night shoots, and one of our characters, Trevor, played by Wyatt Lindler, was 12 years old. So the sun goes down around 9, and then he has to be released from set at 11. So you have to shoot all your stuff with this kid in this little window. It's so difficult because tricky. You have to block shoot all of his shots. So you have to do the setups for all your scenes. You have to go and light and shoot every setup with this kid, and then you release him. Then you have to go back and relight and reshoot all the coverage for every scene. So it's like a puzzle. And so every single opportunity for us to not be in a night shoot was like taken. And so there were shots like in the back of the van that were like the corn wagon that were done in daylight where we had to tent it off and use blue screens and stuff. And when they run to the second barn and they're trapped right before they run to the corn wagon, they that was all shot during daytime. And so, yeah, I mean, it really helps you.
The moon,
in terms of the nuclear. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. The moonlighting shot when they run to the second barn. That's like one of my favorite glows that like, I just think however you did the shading of that light was just something nostalgic about it. It's just really pretty.
That's Sev, our DOP. She's incredible. She's going to win an Oscar one day. I met her just through one of our producers sent me her reel, and I was like, oh, this work's really interesting because all very character driven. And then when we work together, like, oh, we really complement each other. She's not like, she doesn't make a lot of like horror films. She makes, very personal human dramas and these really beautiful like character driven stories, which is great because that's what I want. I want every decision to be based on character. And that's just her, with beautiful lighting. Then the toxic waste thing, my original pitch for this originally was that it was going to be an alien, like, because it's inspired by Aliens and Slither and Little Shop of Horrors and that sort of thing, where it's from a different planet. Only because I wanted it to be I just wanted to have some sort of sentient, essence to it, where it's more than just a fruit. But then in the development of the script and talking about it, it became more and more obvious as we developed it that if it's organic in the form of a train, also these train derailments were happening as we were writing the script. There was multiple train derailments, a huge one in Ohio, toxic spill all over the water. So
I live 25 miles from East Palestine.
So I mean, those are real, and that's toxic waste in the water, into the crops, into the farms, and like there's full evacuations, and it just seemed like, oh, this is so much more like topical and relevant. It's similar to COVID in the sense because you have to evacuate, then there's quarantines, and it's like, oh, and then it also just lends itself to being a more organic thing. Maybe there's an essence of like using GMOs and chemicals in our food that people will put into the film, but it shifted at one point from extraterrestrial to terrestrial
to like bio horror. Yeah,
it works so much better as just like a toxic waste event because it also, we already mentioned the Toxic Avenger, but like that shot of the guy smoking weed in the field with the power plant in the background. Is like it's a known thing for Brian and I where we live. There's so many like empty fields of like wheat and stuff that we have, but we also have these giant power plants and their smokestacks are like rising in the background. Mm-hmm. But it also does look like the Tromaville where they always have the nuke plant in the background of whatever's going on there.
Yeah. Just looming over your crops is this like chemical smokestack pumping whatever chemicals into the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say every year I plant pumpkins and hope that they, one of them becomes sentient and I can train it to murder my enemies.
It would be interesting to experiment with real pumpkins and some chemicals and see what you can conjure up. But when we got to that location, that smokestack was just there. There's this huge chemical plant right beside where we were filming. It was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the perfect. And every single thing we shot was in this one village. We never left the village. It was like a summer camp. The whole crew living together in this 1700s or early 1800s pioneer village. The only challenge with filming in Kentucky in the spring is just the weather. We had massive thunderstorms, and at one point a tornado ripped right through.
Ooh.
I was going to say, that's tornado country, man. Yeah.
I learned that the hard way. I mean, I'm from Toronto. I guess we do sometimes see a tornado up here, but it's not common. And down there, we were dealing with storms every day.
Oh, yeah.
Very challenging.
It's interesting. I actually was just at little, I don't know, fall Halloween craft festival thing with my kids. And I looked down and I saw this, and there was like a couple of, looked like 20 something guys that had like a booth set up, and they were selling all these little 3D printed little Halloween trinkets and keychains and that sort of stuff. And I spotted this guy, and I was like, this is the most serendipitous thing I've ever seen in my life, and I'm obsessed with it.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to show you guys. This literally, I mean, as you can see, it's like kind of pieced together in this little chain link. Tell me that does not look almost like an action figure.
No, it does. It has, we had early designs that were very much like that. We switched the lines from the bottom to the top. Yeah. So they all come from like the top stem, but like have early designs that look just like that. That's great.
Yeah. Obviously, like this is more of a jack-o'-lantern face, but I was like, all right, I got to take that home with me. That's
got the same. It's got the same.
So this is my my recording mascot from here forward.
I kind of have it on my arm here. I have the.
Oh yeah, is that?
It's like a jellyfish version, but it's.
Oh, nice.
Just because your piece, dude, Brian, your piece is like a jack-o'-lantern jellyfish, and I'm just it's just serendipity. It's like, hey,
that's pretty much what it is.
And for the people only,
I've got this guy here.
Oh.
Oh, there we go. I love the look. I love the look of the little baby pumpkins, if you will. And something just perverse and funny about Kira at the end, just taking the snowblower just to the whole lot of them and just kind of running them down.
Yeah, I don't know how I thought of that, but I think the idea just kind of hit me, like, because I was thinking, like, what could it be? And I was thinking of different ways you could kill a bunch of pumpkins, and they're all very cliche. Like, is it like liquid nitrogen that freezes them and then they smash them? It had all these ideas that were just very cliche. And then the idea of a snowblower, I'm like, I wonder if they chopped up, if they would spit out the top like that. And then I Googled pumpkins versus snowblower. And if you just Google pumpkins versus snowblower, you can see these hilarious videos of people lining up pumpkins with tractors, snowblowers, and then just plowing over them. This rainbow of pumpkin guts. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's the way they got to go.
Yeah. If you're looking for an idea of how to kill something effectively, just go on YouTube and just type in like rednecks doing dumb shit. Like you're gonna find some inspiration.
Someone's done it. If you've thought of it, someone's done it and filmed it and put it online.
Yeah, taking a thresher to a bunch of innocent whatevers.
Sasha wins her battle because of the pesticide. That's how that went down, right? She just sprays it. Yeah. Right. Okay. So there's one, right? You use that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. A herbicide and a pesticide. Sasha's amazing, who played Maddie.
Yeah.
Sasha Mason. That's a very tough role to play, because writing it, it's like she's supposed to be this beautiful blonde that everyone assumes is a dumb blonde, but then she's got this like almost Asperger's style of intelligence where she just knows weird things, and she's like socially awkward but knows a lot and is very, very secret smart. And that's a tough thing to play. That's a tough thing to land. And God, Sasha was the only one that auditioned that actually nailed it. I didn't even know, like, I don't know how to play that character. She came in and just nailed it. And I love what.
Yeah, that was an we didn't mention it. Unexpected turn there, because whenever you originally see Trevor, and we get the vibe that he's got obviously a crush on Maddie. you just think she's going to be the, the prom queen, cheerleader, whatever type. And then you quickly realize it's like, and I actually remember going back and like tweaking my notes because I jumped to a conclusion that was what the character was going to be, but it wasn't, right? She was the
crisis management is what
the
comes
scientific
up.
know-how nerd. Crisis management. Yeah. I like that. She had the MO of how to address all the crisis management stuff.
Yeah, she's very smart, and actually she has a lot of answers to a lot of the questions. And if you think about it, she's the only character that actually survives the pumpkin alone because from using her intelligence.
Ooh, good point.
I really like that character. I've never really seen a character like that. I've read some reviews or some reviewers are like, oh, there's paper thin characters. I'm like, is there? Because I think some of these characters are awesome. I think the Maddie character is awesome. I think the Kevin character and the Bill character. I think they're really unique, and they're characters we haven't really seen too much of. But I do love what Sasha did with Maddie.
Yeah, I agree. And for how quickly we move to, there's no downtime in this movie, right? There's no slog period where we talk about this quite often. As jaded horror fans, I will give movies a lot of leeway just for being different and being entertaining. And the worst thing you can be is boring, right? In the horror genre, in my mind. And there is not a boring moment in this movie. It is bang, bang, bang. And for you to also have characters you care about is no small feat. So I somebody said there were paper thin characters. I could point them to about 40 other movies off the top of my head that are a much better example of that.
Yeah, in a movie like this, I know movies like this are judged by the kills. That's kind of what they are. That's how they're critiqued and judged for most part. I mean, films like Terrifier, people love them because of the kills. I mean, that's what these movies are. And I know that, but you also, I'm producing this with a team of storytellers. Our producer, Debbie Liebling, she greenlit South Park. She greenlit Borat. She's a comedic legend who used to be the president of, I think, Universal. And, these are like, she's like a legend. And, we really wanted to inject story into this where it's not, you do have kills, but you also have real characters and real dynamics between the characters that are unique. We haven't really seen 1,000 times. So when I read a review that's like, oh, we've seen those characters, and I'm like, I don't know. I think you weren't really watching, or, just looking at the kills. But you can't, if you made a movie of just pure killing all the way through, it actually would be super boring. And people, you don't actually want that.
Yeah.
And there isn't many good examples of that. You have to have dynamics. Stories are about character. And that's what they are. So I'm happy that you enjoy these moments where there is a bit of character and there is a bit of dialogue in between the kills. I mean, that's what stories are. And even Terrifier has those beats too. Every film has to have them. You can't just have mindless killing for 2 hours.
Right. Yeah.
That's not a movie.
Yeah. I mean, Terrifier 3 is probably one of the better ones of that series as far as like characterization goes. But like, even for your film, what's more interesting? I mean, not more interesting, but what is a very interesting part of the film is like the cleverness of how they get out of the barn, and the ploy they use with the walkie-talkies. Like that's an interesting thing. I don't think I've seen it exactly that way in another movie, although it did very much remind me of Tremors, like the way they threw the rocks and went fishing for the graboids. It was the same, it was kind of the same kind of cleverness of like, oh, we can lower the monster around with these audio cues because it's still pretty much a dumb pumpkin. We don't know exactly how big the brain is, but it has, some awareness of, the world around it, and it can be tricked.
And exactly. And if it can hear and it's following sounds, then it actually would be a smart way to lure it away from you. Would be. And like Tremors, it works to a certain degree, but then it backfires on them when it spits then
it learns. Is the other thing.
To the point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I like about the pumpkin monster. I don't know. Do you have a name for it?
Yeah. Well, we called it Shakira. Because we were at the Shaker Village and Kira shakes her.
Oh, yes.
And Peyton over a crew dinner, Peyton said we should name it Shakira because it is a woman. It is a female, right? This is a mother.
Okay. Yeah.
So
because it flowers and all that.
Hayden named it Shaker or Shakira, and then we so every time the pumpkin came out, it was puppeteer Jonathan wears an easy rig for cameras, or those easy rigs that go around your hips, and then there's a cable that holds it. You can tighten the tension. The easy rig would hold the puppet, so he'd come out with the puppet, and we would blast Shakira. I have a boom box. I have a boom box I use on set. This thing here, I carry this with me on set, and so I blast Shakira. Hips don't lie, as loud as possible. But every time the pumpkin came out, the whole crew starts dancing. Because it's like 3 a.m. and we're exhausted, and so it's always Shakira in my mind.
That's great that it gets entrance music. But what I was getting at is it's also a great monster when the monster learns. Like we watch it learn throughout the film as it grows on its own. So that's just like another good thing for a monster to have. Whereas like some monsters, Jason doesn't learn. He just kills and then eventually explodes through a door. I love those movies, but like he's not, he doesn't learn.
Yeah, totally.
That's a t-shirt right there. Jason doesn't learn, and it's just him with his mask off, just looking doofy.
Yeah, it is cool how it learns, and like I love the moment where they're like, it can't get in, it can't get between the cracks, and it starts to dig and then come up through the ground, And that trying to do that was such a pain in the ass. There was a lot of conversations. We just cut this. Does it just slither through a hole? I'm like, no, it has to come to the ground. It has to. We had to build an entire fake ground. It was a tabletop to puppeteer coming up from underneath. So all those shots of it coming in were all done by hand with a mechanical vine, like puppeteered like this, that would come up the cracks.
I'm going to mention one last cast. I know we're going to wrap up here pretty quick, but as someone who was in high school in the year 2000, DJ Qualls, who plays Bill, iconic as such a memorable character in Road Trip, but has really come to in the last decade as someone who has become an unsung person in genre films. We talked about Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. He appears in an episode of that, an episode of Creepshow. I love the Creepshow TV series, Z Nation. He's been in a ton of stuff. Oh, Fargo. Genre. I would argue genre. Genre film there as well. What was it like working with him? Because he interesting performer who people of a certain age think of as that like really iconic role in Road Trip,
or the new guy. Really,
I'm thinking new guy. It's always
that too.
Yeah, the new guy. Road Trip.
See, for me, it's Road Trip, but yeah,
for me, it's Road Trip. For me, it's Road Trip as well. Yeah. He
but what was it like working with him? Such a recognizable character actor.
It was great. He's like the real deal. Like he's a real actor. He comes in very professional. Yeah. He knows his stuff, his processes. He's very focused. Like he takes it so seriously. When he's around, I'm like, oh, he's like a real movie. I didn't expect that from him. I don't know what I expected. Everyone, because some of our younger actors are so casual. Like he's like an incredible actor, and I really love because you're right about Road Trip and New Guy. These are movies that I loved from the 90s or the early 2000s that I wanted to bring into this. And when I met him, he told me that because here's the thing with this movie, with the script, we have this relationship between Bill and Kevin where there's two characters that are closeted, right? This was this on the page, on paper. This was tricky. This wasn't like a sure thing, A lot of people that read the script were like, what is this relationship? Like, and we're like, no, they're closeted. It's the 90s. They're just not, they're in a working dynamic at this village where there can't be open. And also it's the 90s. And we're not making fun of them because there's a lot of questions like, it was very like sensitive and delicate, that relationship. And so when I met DJ, he was like, I love the script. I love what you did with those characters. And he told me that in the 90s, he was closeted like that. He's like, I know exactly how to play this character. I know exactly what to do. And we just talked about like what it was like and his experience back then. And I just came out of it going, oh, we're gonna nail this. This dynamic between Bill and Kevin is a non-issue anymore. It's just going to be so clear that these are just characters and we're not. It's like the jokes Bryan Adams, the jokes, all those jokes are we're not making fun of anybody. It's just funny character. It's funny characterization. It's funny. It's a funny dynamic. It's the joke is like that their love for each other comes out in the within the traumatic scenarios that happen, and that's just kind of funny.
Well, and also they're not used to, for obvious reasons, expressing it publicly. So it's going to come out in this like very organic outpouring that is going to come across as slightly like awkward in a cute way, because that's just they haven't, this is not something they express on a daily basis in public, know? So it just felt very genuine. It felt very genuine. I thought it was a great kind of surprise, because in the very first scene, I mean, God knows there's so many movies out there now that not just I mean, I hate to make this comparison because it's a light years away, but even within like, the kind of made for TV, Hallmark movies and stuff like that, like you can immediately detect when like, oh, these two people are supposed to be love interests. You know what I mean? It's written on the walls. It wasn't necessarily initially, so it became a little bit like it came as a little bit of a surprise, but then it became very genuine, and then of course the ending quite sad. But it was I don't know, it just felt very organic. It felt very genuine, I guess.
That's great. That's great to hear, because I love the way that relationship worked out on screen. Mm-hmm. It is sweet and it is funny, because the characters are kind of funny, and just Kevin using the walkie-talkies and turning himself into a slingshot. This visually is funny.
Yeah, he's like, ow, 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 ow.
Yeah, it's a good idea to try to use walkie, but it's also kind of funny in execution. Like that balance of heart and comedy and horror. It's very difficult, and it's such a delicate balance. And if one is off, the whole thing falls apart. And so, and I know we don't land every single joke and every single moment in this, but I love the Bill Kevin dynamic and how that, I really do think that relationship does land. Again, when I see these comments, like the characters suck, I'm like, I don't think you're really paying attention, because that I've never seen that dynamic in a movie, in a horror film. Yeah. And I think it's really cool that there's a sweet moment like that. And there's heart in these characters. And even like, and then we rip his heart out, and then the monster's holding his beating heart like Indiana Jones. It's like, it's like, I love that balance of heart and then horror.
Yeah.
Personally, I and I think when we showed it to Hulu finally, they only gave us a couple notes that weren't even notes. They just 4 little paragraphs came back, and they said, that relationship between those two characters is a real standout. And I was like, yes, and that's because of DJ and because of Mark Sully, who played Kevin. Those two actors are incredible. That's why it works, because the actors are great.
The other thing, and knowing nothing about this movie going in, aside from, hey, I open up Hulu and, I have the Hulu, live TV thing, right? So I'm on there quite often, and I look it up. Okay, I'll pop this on. I knew nothing about this movie going in, right? Went in completely blind. The one thing that I oftentimes, well, we've talked about quite a few times on the podcast, really more in pertains to Netflix once upon a time, but we've seen it broaden out to other streaming services, especially with the like streaming exclusives, if you will, is the way that they're paced is oftentimes feels like there's built-in screen time, right? It's like there is time built into the script, into the story, for people to be looking at their phones. And that drives me nuts a little bit. I remember when we talked about the what was the 3 movies, Steve, from a few years ago on Netflix?
Fear Street.
About it was like 94. Fear Street, right? The Fear Street movies that came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
Although I did like them, it felt like it was for a quote unquote streaming audience that was going to be half paying attention and looking at their phones. And I remember that being kind of sticking in my craw a little bit, because it really, for people who are immersed in the movie, it felt like there was some weird pacing things that were happening. And I appreciated, because full disclosure, I almost half expected it, but it wasn't there. Right. I thought the pacing was really, on I don't know. It was paced really well. So I guess my ultimate question I'm getting to is like, maybe this is a fallacy, but I hear a lot of, quote unquote, movie nerds and podcasts and people who like to be critical of things, even though they're perhaps not qualified like myself, that people like call that out as a pet peeve maybe, or something like that. Did you experience like that? Was that something that you experienced like as a note, or like, hey, we need to not build out like screen time or something like that, but like, hey, we need to consider pacing decisions based on the format in which people are going to be watching this? Was that ever a part of the conversation? It sounds like the answer is no, but I haven't talked to somebody who, had a movie like this on, a major streaming service that was made in that context that would be able to answer that question.
This is a very interesting topic because you do actually have to consider that. There's a term for it. I think it's called dual screen viewing. These days, you do have to consider that probably like 70% of the audience or 80% is watching your movie while they're on TikTok. And so they're not really watching. And that's just that's a reality. And I think it's called dual screen viewing. Dual screen viewing concept never was brought up in our movie by anybody. That was not brought up by Hulu. But I think as storytellers, as filmmakers, or people that do try to tell cinematic stories for streaming services or made for TV, you do have to consider that most people are going to be watching TikTok or checking Instagram while they're doing it. So it is interesting because it's a reality. Even if you're doing a theatrical movie, it's all roads lead to Netflix or Hulu or to Amazon or whatever. Yeah. But no, it was never brought up in our case. No, we are, like I said, our producer, Debbie Liebling, she's a, old school comedic rock star who kind of like helped guide the ship a little bit in terms of what this thing should be tonally and helping with the studio. But the studio involvement was minimal. They didn't have a lot of notes. They, at all. So, shockingly so. I almost suspiciously, there was suspiciously no notes. I was like, why? Our producer submitted the notes and they're like we've never seen so few notes. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's weird. Usually you get like 20 pages. But no, they were just very happy. They were very happy with it. And they were very hands off. And even when we did our premiere last week and we did all this marketing, they sent me every trailer, every poster, every single marketing thing. They just, and everything, every note that I make, every change I ask for, they do. I've never experienced that. I mean, it's really like an indie filmmaker's dream. Really. I'm not just saying that. That's 100% true. Just today, driving home, I got an email. They're like, hey, do you want to go to a Lakers game? We got extra tickets with box seats. I'm like, what? This is amazing. I'm like, I'm in Toronto. There's no way I can be at a Lakers game on Saturday. But, it's just, they're really great to work with. Really great. And that's really cool. Never brought up anything weird like that ever. But when I'm writing movies, I am thinking about the fact that you have to consider that. You have to consider the story being experienced that way because it's true.
It's such an interesting phenomenon that we talk about so often. And when we're talking about these kind of like streaming exclusive releases, and it seems so, I don't know, blatant when people are over considering it. I just remember that conversation around Fear Street that we were just like, wow, nothing happened for 10 minutes.
I mean, like you said, it's definitely very like stuck to Netflix, because I notice it even in like Netflix action films where like there's just nothing happens for a while and like they're just doing nonsense dialogue. They're like, where's this isn't moving. This isn't moving. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I think the reality is more likely that it's just very expensive to do action. It's very expensive and very time consuming to do a lot of action, a lot of gore and killing. When you're actually just telling a story and you have to stay within a budget, there has to be dialogue. There has to be dips sometimes, just because otherwise, it's, unless you make movies, it's hard to understand how much of your budget goes into anything involving action, anything involving blood, puppets. It's just ridiculous. And, unless you have all the money in the world, it's really hard to not have stretches of dialogue. But also, if you're telling a story, you want a roller coaster. You want the ups and downs. Otherwise, if it's just up the whole time, that gets boring. You have to have ups and downs. You have to keep people engaged. So,
there's good examples and there's bad examples. I think with John Woo's remake of The Killer that he did for Netflix, is a really good example. Like, it's nowhere near as good as the original Killer, but it's still like it has that proper roller coaster of like pacing. Whereas like I think like I don't know, maybe it was like a Ryan Gosling film or something that they did that was specifically for Netflix, and it's just like scenes of like it's not even the roller coaster of like moving you forward or getting you interested in the characters. It's just like, okay, now here's your babies, now you can go look at your screen for a minute while we set up the next thing, and then we'll jerk the curtain away for you, and then you can go wee for the jingling keys.
Yeah. Yep. I get you. All right. Anything else? Drew, Steve, I don't know, Justin, if you had anything else you wanted to bring up. I know we've already kept you for damn near 2 hours. Anything else that we wanted to talk about in regards to this movie before we wrap this sumbitch up?
From my end, just I love talking about movies. I love talking about making movies. I appreciate just hanging out here talking to you guys. I could talk for 5 hours. You know, it's just really cool to hang out and talk about it. You know, making movies like this, it's so difficult. It's so no one really knows how hard this movie was to make, except for the actors and me and the crew, because it was a nightmare trying to shoot this thing. And I love that it's out. I love that people are seeing it. I love that it's dividing certain people too. Like it's cool for me to see it out there and to talk about it with you guys. I appreciate it. So yeah, thanks for having me on. It's really cool.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, happy to have you on, and thanks, Drew, for coming on and weighing in on this. I know we brought you on late in the week, and we're like, "Hey, go watch this movie real quick." So we appreciate you, you coming on. And
it was not a chore.
Well.
It was a treat. It was no, it was cool. And when you texted me earlier and said, "Hey, Justin Harding's gonna be on," I was like, "Okay." Like, do you? I literally almost texted you back, like, because it's just, hey, let's hear what's going on. This is the guy. And I was like, yeah, I literally was about to text you a second text. Hey, do you want me to like meet you next week or something? Which I know it's not that way. And Justin, you've been a super nice guy, and I seriously, thanks for talking with us and putting up with us for 2 hours. But no, man, it was just cool. It was really cool to hear the whole backlog story, just your process. The storyboarding thing was just for me personally, it kind of really cool. Just as a way of managing your time and how you get the end goal the way you want it, and to be concise and just yeah, man, I love the vision. And yeah, for anybody else listening, it was all about the movie tonight. And man, I just appreciate you having me on. And you were asking me to close up. Yeah, we have the single coming out, Drew and the Blue. I just wanted to say that. Check us out on all the things. I know, Steve, I'm going to send you the file to play this song later. Either way, dude, I'm really happy this night was taken over by the director, man. That's really cool.
Just added you, Drew and the Blue. So I'm on Instagram now, on your Instagram. So.
Oh, yeah, I followed you when we first started.
Very cool. I'll be checking out all your music, man. So very cool.
Likewise with your films, man. So thank you.
If you're looking for some dang spooky ass Halloween music to check out, definitely check out Drew and the Blue. If you're looking for some spooky ass Halloween movies to watch, go check out Justin and Carve. This was so much fun. A great way to wrap up the 2024 Halloween season. It's wild that it's coming to an end. When this releases, we will be in the home stretch down to the last few days of spooky season. So get all them watches in, get all them listens in, go out there. Number 1, hail Satan. Number 2, watch spooky movies, listen to some spooky music, go out, have yourself a beer, have a good time. And yeah, thank you guys for coming on. This was an awesome way to wrap up the spooky season for 2024, and hopefully next time both of you guys have some projects going, you'll grace us with your presence again.
That's right. Maybe Carve 2. Who knows? Thanks, guys.
Ooh, yeah.
Hey,
thank you.
I'm here for it. All righty, guys. For the Halloween is Forever crew, I'm Brian.
And I'm Steve.
All right, happy Halloween, guys. Boo.
Bye-bye.